afternoon, class. How are you? How was your lunch? Let me ask you a question. How often do you eat lunch? Do you eat lunch every day? Do you eat lunch sometimes? Do you eat lunch rarely, often? Sometimes, okay. Sometimes. Oh, some people say always. Okay, that's good. So let's start. That will lead into my lesson in a bit. Do you remember what an adverb is? Well, let's refresh our memory of adverbs. Adverbs express how an action is done. So basically, it gives us more information about a verb. So we could say, Mark walks. Okay, that's fine. Or Mark walks quickly. It tells us it tells us information about the verb. So when we decide how often an action occurs, we use adverbs of frequency, and that's what I'm going to be discussing today. Adverbs of frequency are often used with a present simple because they indicate repeated and routine activities. So they can be placed on a continuum of frequency as I am showing here. So adverbs of frequency. So basically, we have, these are the common ones that we use. So basically, 0% is never happens. And then you have rarely, sometimes is in the middle. Sometimes, as we said, sometimes people eat lunch. And then usually, often is higher on the spectrum of the frequency. And then always is always done. Most certain, you always do it. Or the action is always done. So let's see the example that I have here. So for usually often, Mark is usually late. Mark sometimes plays tennis. So does he play tennis every day? No. It's sometimes. So he could maybe play a couple times a week, couple times a month. It's sometimes. So let me ask you to fill in. Give me an example of what you do always. What you always do.
I always go to sleep at night.
Okay, so Mira always goes to sleep at night. We know it's definite. She always does. We know that for a fact. What can we use for never?
I never walk to the school.
So Shin never walks to school. Okay. So basically it shows us what the action is and how often in time you do it. So moving on, so the form of now where we are going to be placing it. So basically the form of adverbs of frequency is between the subject and the verb. So for example, Sarah sometimes goes skiing in the winter. So Sarah is a subject. Sometimes is an adverb of frequency. And skiing is the verb. We could also put, let's say, Mark is often late. So, what's the subject?
Mark.
adverb of frequency? That's the verb, right? Late? He's often late. Exactly. So those are examples of where the adverb of frequency should be placed. Having said that, we have to make sure that we don't use it in the wrong order. Let's say, for example, what not to do. Wrong order. We could say she drives usually to the mall. She drives usually to the mall. That doesn't sound right. It sounds a little funny. So how would we change that to be correct? She
Usually.
Drives to the mall. Subject, adverb, verb. Another point to make is negative. Like, I don't always run. You can't use I don't always run because I don't always run. So if it's always certain that you do something. You don't always run, or you don't never cook. You never cook. You can't always put don't never. Another thing to look at is, so that is wrong as well. So another thing to look at is always. When we look at always, remember always S to pronounce the S. You can't say I always run. I always run. Another example, well, it's often. So really you could say often, or you could say often. Native speakers are fast when they speak, and they can say often, and you don't hear the T. But both ways is fine. When you say often, you could hear it, or often, it's still the same, but the T is silent. So anyways, now we could go into groups, and we could practice adverbs of frequency, and I'll walk around and see if anybody has any questions.